On the hot soil of Brazil, in a small town in São Paulo state, a little boy was born in 1986 whose extraordinary memories would bring us face to face with one of humanity's greatest mysteries. Cameron Costa's story is not merely a collection of a child's strange claims, but a series of evidence that seriously challenges everything we think we know about the nature of consciousness and the finality of death. The beginning of the story takes us back to 1980s Brazil, when the Costa family lived an ordinary life in the suburbs of Campinas. Maria and Jose Costa were simple working people who never would have dreamed that their little son would share memories with them that would completely overturn their worldview. Cameron began talking about things very early, at barely 2 years old, that didn't fit at all into a young child's sphere of experience. While other children fantasized about fairy tale characters, Cameron told stories about the daily life of a man living on an old farm with such detail that deeply shocked his parents. "I used to have a big farm," Cameron said once when he was barely 3 years old. "Many cows, horses, and chickens. My house was white, with a big veranda." These statements initially seemed like innocent, childish imagination. But as Cameron became more detailed in his memories, family members began to realize that something extraordinary was happening. The little boy didn't just talk about general things from farm life, but mentioned extremely specific details. He talked about having a favorite horse called Estrela, which was gray with black spots. He told how the chickens always laid eggs under a certain tree, and that there was a well behind the house whose handle often broke. Dr. Hernani Guimarães Andrade, a pioneer of reincarnation research in Brazil, first heard about Cameron's case in 1988. Andrade had devoted decades to investigating similar cases, and Cameron's story immediately caught his interest. This little boy knew details about a past life that would have been impossible to learn through normal means, Andrade later stated. According to Cameron's memories, he lived in the 1930s and was known in the area as João da Silva. He said his wife was Rosa, and they had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. The eldest boy was Antonio, the second Miguel, and the girl was named Carmen. This information was so accurate that Cameron's parents began to take their son's claims seriously. The little boy also told how João da Silva died at the age of 64 from a heart attack while working in the field. Cameron could describe the exact circumstances of his death. He went out in the morning to check on the cattle when sudden chest pain seized him, and he collapsed beside a coffee bush. "I couldn't get up," Cameron told. "My chest hurt very much, and then everything went dark." The little boy often cried when talking about this memory, showing an emotional intensity that exceeded what we would expect from a healthy child regarding an imagined story. Maria Costa spent countless nights comforting her son, who often returned to that traumatic moment in his dreams. Cameron often woke up at night crying and shouting, "Rosa, Rosa, where are you?" Maria recounted. For a 3-year-old child, this was unnatural. I didn't know what to do with him. Dr. Ian Stevenson, the world-renowned reincarnation researcher from the University of Virginia, visited Brazil in 1990 to personally examine Cameron's case. According to Stevenson, Cameron's story contained all the elements that point to an authentic reincarnation case: early memories, detailed information, emotional connection to the past life, and most importantly, verifiable facts. Cameron's case is special because he didn't just share memories, but also information that we could verify afterwards, Stevenson said. When a 4-year-old child can accurately describe the layout of a farm from 30 years earlier and can name the people who lived there, that deserves serious attention. The family and researchers began investigating Cameron's claims. The locality mentioned by the little boy, Itapira, actually existed in the interior of São Paulo state. During the research, it was discovered that in the 1930s, there indeed lived a farmer named João da Silva there, who died under exactly the circumstances Cameron described. Local church records and contemporary newspaper articles confirmed most of Cameron's claims. João da Silva indeed died at the age of 64 from a heart attack in 1932. He had a wife, Rosa, and 3 children with the names the little boy mentioned. The farm's location, the description of the house, even the surrounding topography matched Cameron's detailed accounts. During the research, a particularly interesting discovery was that the local newspaper published a short article about João da Silva's death on August 15, 1932. The article contained exactly those details that Cameron mentioned. The farmer went out to the field in the morning, had a heart attack, and was found dead beside a coffee bush. When I saw that newspaper article, chills ran down my spine, Jose Costa recounted. Every word matched what my son had told us. How could a 4-year-old child know about a 56-year-old newspaper article? One of the most shocking moments came when the researchers traveled to Itapira with Cameron's parents. The little boy, who had never been in that area before, could accurately show the location of João da Silva's former farm. Although the original house no longer stood, the foundations were still visible, and Cameron accurately described where the veranda, well, and outbuildings had been located. This moment changed my life, Maria Costa later recounted. When I saw that my son knew exactly where that home was, where he claimed to have lived, I could no longer doubt that something extraordinary was happening here. Cameron's behavior also reflected his alleged former life. As a child, he was extraordinarily drawn to animals, especially horses and cows. When he saw a horse, he always tried to pet it and behaved with them as if he had been working with animals for decades. This was particularly striking since the Costa family lived in an urban environment, and Cameron had never encountered farm animals before. The little boy also showed peculiar knowledge about agricultural work. At 4 years old, he knew exactly how to milk a cow, though he had never seen this done. When they once visited a nearby farm, Cameron approached the animals with natural ease and moved among them with confidence that suggested decades of experience. The farmer we visited was completely amazed, Jose recounted. He said he had never seen a 4-year-old child who understood animals so well. Cameron behaved as if he had worked with farm animals his whole life. If Cameron's incredible story has fascinated you so far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more reincarnation cases and spiritual topics that can help understand the deeper secrets of our existence. Dr. Andrade conducted detailed psychological examinations on Cameron to rule out pathological explanations. The little boy proved to be an intelligent, healthy child with no signs of mental illness or severe fantasy world. Cameron was a completely normal little boy, except for these extraordinary memories, Andrade noted. The researcher found Cameron's emotional reactions particularly interesting. When the little boy talked about João da Silva's family, he often became sad and expressed feelings of loss. "I miss Rosa," he once said, crying, "and my children too. Do they still remember me?" This emotional depth goes beyond simple fantasy and suggests a deep psychological connection to the past life. In Cameron's case, the question of temporal awareness was particularly interesting. The little boy was aware that João da Silva had died and that he now lived in another body, in another family. This dual consciousness is often observed by reincarnation researchers and is one of the strongest pieces of evidence for the reality of the phenomenon. "I know that now I am Cameron," the little boy said when he was 6 years old. "But before that I was João. And I also know that João died before I was born. This is hard to understand, but I know it's true." The researchers paid special attention to Cameron's linguistic abilities. The little boy used words and expressions characteristic of rural Brazil in the 1930s, but which had become obsolete by the 1980s. In his speech, he often used agricultural terminology that only the older generation knew. For example, Cameron often used the word corral for the cattle pen, which was an obsolete expression that was rarely used in the 1980s. Similarly, he used the word tropeiro for mounted traders, which was also an archaic expression. Cameron clearly could not have learned these words from his environment. Dr. Jim Tucker, who continued Stevenson's work at the University of Virginia, commented on Cameron's case. "This case shows that reincarnation memories are not limited to general impressions, but can contain extremely specific and verifiable information. Cameron's knowledge of João da Silva's life exceeds what we could call coincidence or cultural transmission." One of the most convincing pieces of evidence for Cameron's case was that the little boy knew things that even the local elderly residents had forgotten. When researchers spoke with João da Silva's former neighbors, it turned out that Cameron accurately remembered details that no one had mentioned for decades. For example, Cameron told that on João da Silva's farm there was a special stone whose shape resembled a sitting dog, and which the farmer considered a lucky stone. When researchers found a 97-year-old woman who had known João da Silva as a child, she confirmed this detail, which no one else had mentioned before. "Yes, I remember that stone," the old woman said. "João always said it brought him luck. No one else could have known about this. Only we who played in the area as children." The Costa family's attitude gradually changed toward their son's special abilities. At first, they worried that something was wrong with the little boy. But as more and more evidence accumulated in favor of his claims, they began to accept that something extraordinary was happening to him. "Initially, I was afraid," Maria Costa confessed. "I thought maybe my son was sick, or some evil spirit had possessed him. But when I saw how kind and loving he remained, and that his memories were really true, I began to believe that this might be God's gift." The local community's reaction to Cameron's case was mixed. In Brazil, where spiritism and reincarnation beliefs are widespread, many people accepted the little boy's claims. Others, however, were skeptical and believed the family was making it all up in hopes of fame or money. Dr. Andrade emphasized that Cameron's family never tried to make money from their son's abilities. "This is one of the strongest pieces of evidence for the case's authenticity," he said. "The Costa family are simple people who didn't seek publicity or financial gain. They just wanted answers to their little boy's strange behavior." Cameron's memories also included details about João da Silva's personality and habits. The little boy told that João drank coffee from a special blue cup every morning and liked to sit on the veranda steps at sunset while smoking his pipe. These personal habits were known only to the closest family members. When they later found João da Silva's middle son, Miguel, who was then over 70 years old, he confirmed these details. "Yes, father had a blue cup from which he drank coffee every day," Miguel said. "And he really liked to sit on the veranda in the evenings. How could a little child know this?" Cameron showed peculiar attraction to certain objects that were connected to João da Silva's life. When he once saw an old pipe in an antique shop, Cameron immediately wanted to pick it up and said that it was his. The elderly man working in the shop later told that the pipe indeed belonged to a farmer named João da Silva, who had sold it to them decades earlier. This moment convinced me that Cameron was really special, Jose Costa recounted. There was no way my son could know whose pipe that was, yet he recognized it immediately. The researchers observed that Cameron's behavior and preferences differed in many ways from his peers. For example, he didn't like sweets but liked bitter coffee, which is unusual for a small child. He preferred old-style music instead of the contemporary pop music of the time, and showed peculiar interest in old photographs and objects. Cameron's memories gradually began to fade as he got older. This is also characteristic of reincarnation cases. Memories of past life usually disappear by age 7 or 8, as the child becomes more integrated into their current life. By the time Cameron was 10 years old, he rarely talked about João da Silva's life. This is a natural process, Dr. Tucker explained. Memories of past life are usually strongest when the child hasn't yet formed a stable identity in their current life. As they become more attached to their present family and environment, the earlier memories recede into the background. In Cameron's case, however, some memories remained into adulthood. 20 years later, when journalists visited him, he still remembered the circumstances of João da Silva's death and reacted emotionally when they talked about the former farm's location. "I still feel that pain in my chest when I think about that day," Cameron said in his 20s. "I know it's strange, but that memory is so vivid, as if it happened yesterday." The scientific community's reaction to Cameron's case was typically divided. Supporters of reincarnation research considered the case further evidence that consciousness can survive the body's death. Skeptics, however, sought alternative explanations. Dr. Paul Edwards, philosopher and one of the most critical opponents of reincarnation research, commented, "Even if we accept that Cameron really knew things about João da Silva's life, this doesn't prove reincarnation. There could be other explanations, for example, telepathy or other paranormal phenomena." Skeptics often pointed out that small children are easily influenced and that families might unconsciously suggest information to them. In Cameron's case, however, this explanation is hard to maintain, since the Costa family knew nothing about João da Silva before the little boy began talking about him. Dr. Christopher French, psychology professor at Goldsmiths University, offered an alternative explanation. It's possible that Cameron somehow gained access to the information, perhaps by overhearing adult conversations or seeing old documents. Children can learn many things through unnoticed channels. This counter-argument was weakened, however, by the fact that Cameron knew such specific and personal details that weren't contained in any public document. For example, he showed knowledge about João da Silva's favorite foods, personal habits, and family secrets that only the closest family members could have known. Dr. Satwant Pasricha, one of the leading figures in Indian reincarnation research, summarized the significance of Cameron's case. This case shows that reincarnation memories are not limited to a single culture or religious tradition. The phenomenon may be universal, and Cameron's case is strong evidence for the continuity of consciousness after death. Cameron's story occupies a special place in reincarnation research because it contains all the important elements that researchers look for: early memories, verifiable information, emotional connection, and independent evidence. This is why experts consider this case one of the most convincing. The development of modern neurology opens new perspectives for understanding Cameron's case. Dr. Eben Alexander, neurologist who began researching the nature of consciousness after his own near-death experience, commented, "Cameron's case suggests that consciousness is not limited to the brain. It's possible that consciousness has an aspect that survives the physical body's death." The latest discoveries in quantum physics also offer new possibilities for understanding reincarnation phenomena. Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose's quantum consciousness theory suggests that consciousness operates at the quantum level, and therefore it might be possible for information to be preserved after the physical body's death. If consciousness really operates at the quantum level, Dr. Hameroff explained, then it's possible that certain information and memories could survive the physical brain's death and manifest in a new brain. Cameron's case might illustrate this process. Cameron's case also shows how deeply reincarnation memories can affect a person's personality development. The little boy's entire childhood was permeated by João da Silva's memories, and this influenced his interests, behavior, and worldview. Cameron was never an average little boy, his mother recounted. He was always more mature than his age and showed wisdom that didn't fit his years. He behaved as if he had already lived life once. This phenomenon is often observed in reincarnation cases. Children who carry memories of past lives often show unusual maturity and wisdom, as if they were combining the experiences of two lifetimes. Cameron's relationship with the past family is also an interesting aspect of the case. The little boy often expressed his desire to meet João da Silva's surviving children. When he finally met Antonio da Silva, João's eldest son, at the age of 12, both were deeply moved. Cameron looked at me as if he knew me, Antonio recounted. And he knew things about my father that only the closest family members could have known. It might sound strange, but I felt as if my father was speaking to me through that little boy. During the meeting, Cameron shared memories that were new even to Antonio, but were later confirmed. For example, he told that João da Silva had almost drowned in a river as a young man, and that this experience haunted him throughout his life. Antonio later asked his brother Miguel, who confirmed this story. "Yes, that was true," Miguel said. "But we never talked about this to anyone. Our father didn't like to talk about it because he was ashamed. How could a strange little boy know this?" Dr. Andrade documented this meeting and believed it was further evidence for the authenticity of Cameron's claims. When two people who are theoretically strangers to each other feel such a deep connection that goes beyond coincidence, he noted. Cameron's case study also contributed to the development of reincarnation research methodology. Dr. Tucker and his colleagues developed new protocols for investigating reincarnation cases, building on the experiences from Cameron's case. Cameron's case taught us how important early documentation and thorough investigation are, Tucker said. The more verifiable information we can gather, the stronger evidence we'll have for the reality of the phenomenon. Brazilian media showed great interest in Cameron's case and reported on it several times in newspapers and on television. This helped discover other similar cases in Brazil and gave reincarnation research greater support in the scientific community. Globo Television made an entire documentary film about Cameron's case, during which they filmed the little boy's visit to João da Silva's former farm. The footage stunningly showed how Cameron navigated the area precisely, despite having never been there before. Cameron's story provided inspiration for many people who found comfort in their own spiritual search in the idea that consciousness might survive death. The little boy's case serves as evidence that human existence is much more mysterious and deeper than what the materialist worldview suggests. Dr. Bruce Grayson, one of the leading experts in near-death experience research, commented on Cameron's case. "This story reminds us that we still have much to learn about the nature of consciousness. Cameron's case might be a window into a reality we don't yet fully understand." As an adult, Cameron wanted to become a doctor and stated that his childhood reincarnation memories helped him understand the connection between death and life. "I know that death is not the end," he said at 20 years old. "After João da Silva's death, I was born. This gives hope and meaning to life. In medical school, Cameron showed particular interest in cardiology, which is not surprising considering that João da Silva died of a heart attack. His colleagues often noted that Cameron possessed extraordinary empathy for cardiac patients, as if he had personally experienced that suffering. Cameron approaches death differently than most medics, one of his professors recounted. He talks about it as if he has deep personal experience. This is a special gift for a doctor. The long-term follow-up of Cameron's case also provided interesting insights. Dr. Tucker and his colleagues regularly stayed in contact with Cameron and his family, documenting how the memories and behavioral patterns changed over the years. We saw that while the specific memories faded, Cameron's personality retained those traits that were characteristic of João da Silva's character, Tucker explained. The patience, love of nature, and deep attachment to family remained present throughout. Cameron's case also highlighted how reincarnation memories can affect family dynamics. The Costa family gradually adapted to their son's special nature, and this bonded them more deeply together. Cameron's case taught us to approach life's mysteries with an open heart and mind, Maria Costa said. Now I know that death is just a transition, not the end. This provides great comfort in difficult times. The local community eventually accepted Cameron's special status. In Itapira, where João da Silva lived, many considered it a religious miracle that the farmer's soul returned in another family. Because of this, Cameron became a kind of local celebrity, and many sought him out for advice on spiritual matters. During Dr. Pasricha's research, she found other similar cases in Brazil where children carried memories of their previous lives. Cameron's case is not unique, she said. In Brazil, where spiritual traditions are strong, we encounter such cases more frequently. This suggests that cultural acceptance can help these memories manifest. The application of modern imaging technologies also opened new dimensions in examining Cameron's case. Dr. Tucker and his colleagues performed MRI examinations on Cameron to observe his brain activity when he tried to recall his reincarnation memories. The results were fascinating, Tucker said. Regions in Cameron's brain activated that are usually connected to long-term memory and emotional processing, despite the fact that these events theoretically never happened to him. Cameron's case also contributed to reincarnation research gaining greater scientific recognition. The University of Virginia Division of Perceptual Studies was partly established, thanks to Cameron's case and similar stories, to systematically investigate these phenomena. One of the most important lessons from Cameron's case was that reincarnation memories don't just contain intellectual information, but deep emotional and personality elements as well. Dr. Tucker observed that Cameron didn't just carry João da Silva's memories, but his personality traits too. João da Silva's contemporaries described him as a patient, kind man who loved nature and was deeply attached to his family, Tucker said. Cameron showed these same qualities, despite growing up in a completely different environment. This personality continuity was particularly surprising, since Cameron grew up in an urban environment, far from agricultural life. Yet he moved among animals and in nature with such natural ease as if he had spent his entire life there. At 15 years old, Cameron had a peculiar experience. When visiting a country fair with his family, an elderly woman recognized him in the crowd. The woman was Rosa da Silva, João da Silva's widow, who was then over 80 years old. When I saw this boy, I immediately knew it was him, Rosa recounted. The eyes, the movements, even his gestures were the same as João's. It was as if my husband had returned in a young body. This meeting deeply moved both Cameron and Rosa. The little boy hugged the elderly woman crying and said words to her that only João da Silva could have used. "Forgive me, Rosa. Cameron said. "I know I left you alone, but I'm here now." Rosa later told that these were exactly the words she had always wanted to hear from her husband at a final farewell. Dr. Andrade documented this extraordinary meeting and believed it was one of the strongest pieces of evidence for the reality of Cameron's case. When two people who have never met feel such a deep emotional connection that goes beyond all rational explanation, he said. After the meeting, Rosa da Silva maintained regular contact with the Costa family. She told them details of João's life that she had never mentioned to anyone before Cameron, yet the little boy remembered them precisely. Cameron knew that João bought a white orchid for Rosa's birthday every year, the widow recounted. "This was our family secret. I never told anyone, yet he knew." These confirmations further strengthened the evidence for Cameron's case. The researchers identified a total of 37 specific claims that Cameron made about João da Silva's life, and 32 of these were confirmed by independent sources. According to Dr. Tucker, this hit rate is extraordinarily high. Based on chance, this accuracy would be practically impossible to achieve, he said. In Cameron's case, we can't talk about simple luck or making things up. During Cameron's high school years, he gradually returned to normal life, but the influence of reincarnation memories remained palpable throughout. His classmates often asked him for advice in difficult life situations because they felt that Cameron saw things differently, more deeply. Cameron was always like someone who had already lived life, one of his best friends recounted. When we had problems, he always knew what to say. He showed wisdom that didn't fit his age. The spiritual community also noticed Cameron's case. Numerous mediums and spiritual leaders approached him to learn from him or collaborate with him. However, Cameron always refused these approaches, saying that he was just a normal person who happened to remember a previous life. "I'm not special," Cameron said at 18 years old. "It just happened that I remember. This doesn't make me a saint or miracle worker. I'm just human, like everyone else." This humble attitude was further authenticity for Cameron's case. Researchers observed that in false reincarnation cases, individuals often consider themselves overly important or attribute special abilities to themselves. Cameron never showed such signs. During his university years, Cameron also studied psychology alongside his medical studies to better understand his own experiences. He wrote his thesis on the psychological effects of reincarnation memories, analyzing his own case as well. "Reincarnation memories are not just interesting curiosities," he wrote in his thesis. "They deeply influence an individual's identity, worldview, and relationships. Understanding this can help others who go through similar experiences." Dr. Tucker also involved Cameron in his research projects, where the young man helped counsel other children and families suffering from reincarnation cases. Cameron's natural empathy and his own experience provided valuable assistance in these situations. "Cameron can offer a unique perspective," Tucker said. "He himself experienced what these families are going through, so he's able to provide real understanding and support to them." Over the years, Cameron's case has been cited in dozens of scientific publications and has become one of the most documented reincarnation case studies. The University of Virginia archives contain several hundred pages of documents about Cameron's case, including interviews, photographs, and medical examinations. Cameron's case also gained international attention. The BBC, National Geographic, and several other documentary makers have covered his story. These films helped bring reincarnation research to a wider audience. Dr. Pim van Lommel, Dutch cardiologist who specialized in near-death experience research, commented on Cameron's case. "This story shows that consciousness is a much more complex phenomenon than traditional neurology assumes. Cameron's case suggests that certain information can survive the physical brain's death. Researchers working in quantum physics also showed interest in Cameron's case. According to physicist Dr. Henry Stapp, the laws of quantum mechanics might allow for non-local storage and transmission of information, which could explain reincarnation phenomena. If consciousness really operates at the quantum level, then Cameron's case doesn't contradict the laws of physics, Stapp said. In fact, it might confirm those theories that suggest consciousness is not limited to the physical brain. By the age of 30, Cameron had become a successful cardiologist and continued to stay in contact with the researchers. He regularly reports on how his memories and feelings about João da Silva's life have changed over the years. The specific memories have mostly disappeared, Cameron said recently, but the emotional connection has remained. I still feel João's love for the family, and this helps me be a better doctor and a better person. Cameron established a small school in Itapira, João da Silva's birthplace, for his family. The school's purpose is to help local children receive better education and to preserve local traditions. This is my way of giving back something to the community that gave me so much, Cameron said. Through João's memories, I connect to this place, and I feel it's my duty to help. If Cameron Costa's extraordinary story has fascinated you, share it with those who are also interested in the topic of reincarnation. Comment below about what you think of this case. Do you believe that Cameron was really the reincarnation of João da Silva? Or do you have another explanation for these strange memories? Cameron's case continues today. Researchers regularly follow his development and document how reincarnation memories influence adult life. This long-term follow-up provides valuable data about the nature of consciousness and the process of reincarnation. According to Dr. Tucker's latest report, Cameron's personality continues to reflect João da Silva's characteristic traits, despite most of the specific memories no longer being accessible to him. This suggests that in reincarnation, not only memories but deeper personality structures can also be inherited, Tucker said. Cameron's case has contributed to reincarnation research becoming more accepted in the mainstream scientific community. Several medical universities have started research programs investigating the survival of consciousness, partly thanks to Cameron's case and similar stories. In the future, Cameron plans to return to Brazil and participate in reincarnation research. I feel I owe this to science and to all those who go through similar experiences, he said. Cameron Costa's story ultimately carries the message that our existence is much richer and more complex than everyday experience suggests. This young man, who carried the memories of two different lives within him, is living proof that the boundaries of human consciousness might be much broader than we have previously imagined. Reincarnation research continues, and Cameron's case remains one of the most convincing examples that consciousness can survive the body's death. This story not only reveals the secrets of the past, but also points toward future possibilities, where we might better understand the true nature of human consciousness and the depths of the connection between life and death.